Hey, movie lovers, welcome back for another Anatomy of Movie here at Popcorn Talk. Today, we dissect the follow-up to Fantastic Beasts. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, grab your wand because we are entering the magical wizarding world of J.K. Rowling. I have Marisa Serafini here.
Hello, everyone.
I'm Phil Svitek. Missing in action today is Dimitri Panos. He will be back for the third installment, I presume.
I hope so.
Couple of things. First off, if you're watching us, then you will notice we are in a different studio today. If you are listening to us, perhaps we might sound a little bit different because we're in a different studio today. That's because we're taping on a different day. We are entering the holiday season of 2018. There's a gluttony of movies out there, and we are trying very hard to cover them all. And so our schedule will be all out of whack in service of you, the fan.
Definitely out of whack, man. It's an embarrassment of riches, and such a first world problem that we have to go see movies.
And talk about them.
Yeah.
Of course. So we decided, with Thanksgiving right around the corner, we got to cover those movies, but we didn't want to, we will be out of town, so we're doing this one. Anyway, the point is, just keep checking back in, and there's lots of movies for you. Now, if you're joining us for the very first time, you might be slightly confused. Well, let me backtrack. What we do is we review movies, yes, but we also talk about the storylines and go really, really deep. Of course, with a movie like this, we're going to talk about the theories and so forth. So as you can imagine, just based on that description, it is spoiler-filled, so you have been warned right here, right now. But in addition to that, we also talk about the making of, the how and the why, culminating, of course, into the box office, and especially with a movie in the Harry Potter-esque universe. Numbers are important,
Yeah, for sure.
When you got billions and billions of dollars on the line.
And an already established fan base, yes.
Absolutely. So we will talk about all that good stuff. And thirdly, if you want to follow along with us, we do have a rundown for you. It's in our description box. It's a little PDF. You just click on it, and it has all the various information that sometimes, admittedly, we might not always get to. We talk for a lot, but we talk for a lot more if we went through every fine detail we found. So without further ado, where we normally begin is with our overall impressions. So, Marisa, Fantastic Beasts, number 2.
Number 2. Well, for those who have followed our anatomies over all these years, you know I'm a big fan of Harry Potter. Just of the Harry Potter universe, the characters and all that. So I was excited to go see this, knowing that, it was going to be fun. It's going to be adventurous. I did not know it was going to be as confusing and as convoluted as it turned out to be for this one. Not realizing, and I should have known, that J.K. Rowling was the screenwriter for this particular film. She's an excellent storyteller. She's an excellent character builder and an author of building of a universe, essentially. I mean, obviously, she created Harry Potter. Storytelling in a condensed version, maybe not so much. But she's so brilliant. That's her problem. She's so brilliant, and I understand she wants to cram so much into it, but it kind of does a disservice to what we need to focus on in the film. So watching it, while visually and VFX-wise fun, exciting, enjoyable, I saw it in IMAX, so explosions everywhere, but story-wise, very confusing. So I'm really split with this film.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I would like to think of myself as certainly an average Harry Potter fan. I've seen the movies, I've read the books. I'm not exploring the Potter universe and reading every fine detail, combing through it, but I'm familiar. And I had I had trouble with the movie as far as everything. I think when you're dealing with Marvel and now movies like this that just culminate for so many movies ultimately, I think you got to have a previously on at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to say that you have to have seen Fantastic Beasts, but I feel like that wasn't enough. You have to have seen all the Harry Potter movies. And not just that. There's things that are from the books that aren't from the movies that are being pulled into question and so forth. There's just a lot, and I agree. I think whereas the Harry Potter movies originally were books written by J.K. that were adapted by someone else, this is now being directly written by J.K. Rowling as a screenplay. I think if someone else took her ideas and pared them down a little bit, it would work.
Condense them for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of my biggest questions. So like I said, we'll dive into the story and then we'll sort of backtrack and talk about the how and the why of how things got made. So one of my biggest questions is, this story is about Newt. Newt, for all intents and purposes, really seems not that much significant.
Like a side character. He's the one that's going places, and in a way, he's like the main threat to everybody. But the stories are not about him.
He's much more. He's more of an observant to all of this.
Right. We're witnessing it and living vicariously through him, or so.
Now, granted, yes, you could say, "Oh, well, Dumbledore tells him to go to Paris, tells him to do these things," but he doesn't have as an active role like Harry. And if we spent time not on Harry, it really was like a very big departure from the movies. Or if anything, we spent them with Ron and Hermione, you know, to a lesser extent, but the focus was always on Harry. So if this is Newt's story overall, then let it be that. But it seems like kind of Dumbledore and Grindelwald are really overtaking that mantle.
Right, and it's not really about Newt. He's the one that, in a sense, gets everybody started. But I mean, look at the poster. If you're listening on iTunes and what have you, the pictures we see Newt and Dumbledore. We don't see Grindelwald, even though the name is Grindelwald. So we know that this movie is more focused on the villain, not Newt. It's a completely different story.
Yes, and I want to ask you about this. Even I should have perhaps done a better job, but I did watch a lot of videos recapping the initial Fantastic Beasts. And just even from that movie to this movie, there seems to be a lot of inconsistencies. Then when you factor in all the rest of the Potterverse, the Wizarding World, I'll call it the Wizarding World since that's our official production company now.
Yep.
Not mine, but JK's. There seem to be a lot of inconsistencies and unnecessarily, like there's things that are being shoehorned. I'll give a small example. Professor McGonagall. She did not need to be in this movie. I get that it's fan service, but it's fan service in lieu of messing up a timeline and adding more questions than anything else.
I think you and I watched the same video. Yeah, and I think it's just a call out for the two fans who really would get a kick out of a cameo, but it does a disservice to what you already have established with characters just for like an appearance, where it messes up not only just timelines but family trees as well. I mean, McGonagall, more of her things is a storyline, but when we bring in other characters, we're messing up with family trees.
Yeah, for clarity, McGonagall appears in the movie 8 years before she's supposed to be born. Now, there's people out there that say, oh, well, it's not the Professor McGonagall. Guess what?
It's
the
Bill
script,
Minerva.
Yes, and the script is out. And I have fact-checked the script. It literally says her first name and her last name. And what it puts in front of it, young. So that is a young Professor McGonagall.
Yep, young Minerva McGonagall.
8 years before she's born. How do you explain that one? Maybe she's such a good professor that she has the time travel thing, that she goes back in time to teach in an earlier decade. But why?
I don't know. Maybe she had, like, she drank a potion that kept her young. Who knows? I mean, it's magic. But that, I don't think they were thinking of timelines. I think they're like, oh, this would be a good callback for people to enjoy. But what good does it do them?
I guess. Well,
nothing.
Let's talk about, I know let's start with the biggest mystery of all, right? The Dumbledore family tree.
Yes.
And this is where things really get complex because Rita Skeeter, as I'm sure you remember, she's quite the journalist.
Yep.
She will dig up dirt. And the fact that we didn't know about this brother to begin with is a big
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also because this brother is so far removed, the end question is, are they really blood related? Where the whole mystery and the running theme throughout this movie is pure bloods are running the world. And we don't know if this Aurelius is actually pure blood, is actually blood relative to Albus.
Well, some say there's theories out there that that he's not his actual brother, and that he is related to Dumbledore, but he's not his actual brother, and that's the lie that Grindelwald says. So he's giving a half lie, because in that way it still fact checks him having the Phoenix come to his aid, because Dumbledore's get a Phoenix.
Yeah.
Here's a dark theory. Let me know if you agree or disagree. It's not mine. I wish I knew who I could give credit to for this. But I read it somewhere that said that it is the sister's son. Now, here's how... Ariana's kid. Now, here's how this works. The fact that they had Lita... that her father be into these weird spells and kind of take advantage of women, they're hinting at something like that with Ariana having conceived Credence and then magically appear on this Titanic-esque ship along with Lita's brother, which in itself already seems very convoluted, that two very important children are on this ship that sinks.
That's doomed.
Yeah. Anyway, so I don't know, like, that's the biggest mystery. Like, where does this go? So do you agree with that theory? Let's start there.
I think it's a good theory, because it would still, if Aurelius is Ariana's son, it would technically make him blood relative and also a Dumbledore. But again, it's too complicated, because there's also other theories that Credence, aka Aurelius, is part of a Horcrux obscurial that was originally Ariana's obscurial.
Yeah.
So those are the two competing, or more like two opposing theories against each other. So it's whatever one you want to believe.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that hinders this from actually being true is less about, okay, the fact that Rita Skeeter didn't know this, or like we didn't know this. It's, again, a timeline issue. The siblings, Albus, is way older than this kid. Mm-hmm. The parents were dead far sooner. Like, this kid would have to be in his late 20s.
Early or mid-30s.
Yeah, to be anywhere, like, within the realm of timeline, right?
And it's confusing, because he'd have to be at least 10 years older, because the last film, and like this movie picks up like
6 months, pretty much.
6 months, like really close to the last film, and Credence in the first one is clearly a teenager. So he has to be at least 10 plus years older just for it to like be feasible.
Yeah. And Ezra Miller, when he did promotion for the first one, he very clearly stated, like, Credence is 18-esque. Mm-hmm. So,
my mind hurts.
Listen, we're just getting started.
I know.
This movie just packs a lot.
I mean, it's a lot of good questions. You do have to ask. Like, I think J.K. Rowling does a good job of setting up a mystery, but not fully completing everything just yet in the second film. Like, and I get it, they want to go for a trilogy. They're probably a third one where more answers we'll get. But I mean, they just threw out too many questions for us, and yet nothing was really resolved.
Well, even that, like, the first one was very much a setup, and then this one. So think of it this way, right? Grindelwald was not concerned with Credence whatsoever in the first one. Now, granted, you could say that now that he knows, how the hell do you? I for the life of me, I can't say Obscurus.
Yeah.
Obscurus. I apologize. It's not. I just
Obscurious, obscurial,
yeah,
obscurious.
Anywho, the point being that, yeah, you could argue that as soon as Grindelwald found out that Credence had an Obscurus, that he would become interested in him. But then he seemed to all of a sudden know everything about Credence. How did he learn this? From prison talk?
Maybe. Also, the whole mystery of the first movie was that no one knew that Credence was the Obscurious. And so once they finally revealed that, it was a person behind it. It's like, oh yeah, now I know you. it's just question. This is why I still think maybe another theory that Grindelwald is just lying to Credence. Because Credence's whole mystery is like, who am I? Who am I? I don't know where I come from. So basically, it's not to say he's whitewashed, but Grindelwald can use him and kind of gaslight him just a little bit, just because Credence doesn't really know his background. So Grindelwald could like tell any lie and he'll believe it. So if he's telling Aurelius, quote unquote, that he's a Dumbledore, he's gonna believe it. So this is also why I think it's still a lie.
Well, to add to that notion of that it's a lie, remember, Grindelwald makes a very deliberate attempt to kill the nanny or whatever it is, who would know the real truth. Mm-hmm. And so you, in essence, if you've killed off the one person that knows, then you can make up whatever you want, because who's going to fact check that? We are. But
we are. But also, if Grindelwald is telling a lie to Credence / Aurelius, this is going to get real old real quick, that he could really just be using Credence just to get to Dumbledore.
Well, so let's talk about that, right? As the movie reveals itself, we know that the reason Dumbledore has been hesitant and the reason Grindelwald needs someone else to destroy Dumbledore is because they have this blood pact and they cannot go after each other. So magic forbids it.
Yeah, they have an actual agreement to never fight each other. But Albus, being smart, because he knows he has the pact, he's using other people to fight Grindelwald, essentially for him and do his bidding.
Yeah, which,
I mean, that's not to say cowardly, but I get it.
You know, from a movie perspective, I understand why he doesn't reveal it, because it's supposed to be this like aha moment. But you would think, at least to Newt, he would kind of say something. I know he likes to play. Dumbledore plays his cards to his chest. Mm-hmm. But I feel like, motivationally speaking, though, like to Newt, it's something that he would reveal, rather than Newt having to find out.
All right, yeah, at least Dumbledore being honest, but not and not ominous and mysterious. Is like, can you do something for me? But this is the real reason why I want you to do this.
Yeah, because I wish I could, but I can't myself.
Just needs to be more direct.
Yeah, and let me ask you this: for a long time since Harry Potter, there's been a lot of talk, let's say, about Dumbledore being more than just a friend to Grindelwald. Let's just say.
Oh yeah, no. J.K. Rowling has said that Dumbledore is gay, and they were in a relationship. It's Grindelwald and Dumbledore.
And yet,
homosexuals.
And yet, it's still not explicit in this. In any, like, we get kind of very glimpses of it, and if you know that part of it, like, what's interesting is we know it because J.K. Rowling has tweeted about it or so forth, but we don't know it from just the source material itself.
No.
And that's where if I have a problem with anything, is that a lot of this, in order to be made sense of, has to be pieced together from every part of the universe.
Yeah, and then a lot of different facts that bring it all together. And you have to remember, when J.K. Rowling actually wrote these characters back in years ago, 80s and 90s.
Not 80s, 90s.
And early 2000s, because like she was writing throughout. Like, times were different. Homosexuality and being gay was complete. I mean, it's still there is. It's more acceptable now, but back then it's so taboo, and so I can understand J.K.'s hesitation and why it took her all these years to say that Dumbledore is gay, and to have gay characters in this story, in this universe, and now even go with the written timeline, and just that they're in 1927, take it back even more decades. Completely taboo.
Yeah, but it's not that Dumbledore has to come out to anyone else, but just the moments that they chose to show with Dumbledore and Grindelwald early on, like, you know, I think they could have taken it just slightly further. And I don't know. I'm not saying an attitude, but it's just interesting for someone as bold as J.K. Rowling. If you're going to commit to that, then just fully commit to it. Is all I'm saying. Because I think then it makes, as a fan, if you know this fact, then it makes there's an understanding of why he can't go after it. Sure, there's the blood pact, but even if there wasn't, I don't know if Dumbledore would want to, because it's like, okay, it's the same
It's
reason.
personal.
Exactly, and Dumbledore in essence fears power, and this is playing with power and love at the same time. So it just crosses the boundary of two things.
It makes it very complicated, the relationship, for sure.
Best show. All right, and as far as kind of what we've been talking about, credence, the fact that I wonder if Dumbledore has any clue that he does have, whether a brother or any other distant relative.
I don't think so, because, well, I don't think he knows, because Albus, seemingly one of the more all-knowing wizards out there, he doesn't realize who Credence is, and it's just really confusing, because this is why I still think Grindelwald is lying, because it would make more sense if it was just a lie.
I think it's a half lie, though.
It could be half lie.
I think it's that. I don't know.
I don't think there's a full truth in what Grindelwald is telling Credence.
Yeah. I think he added the brother bit to further entice Credence to, because he wants to ultimately take down Dumbledore. So one of the interesting things that I thought would be fun to talk about, the differences between Grindelwald and Voldemort, because as nasty as both are, what's interesting is that they tie Grindelwald's motivation because he doesn't want he doesn't want things to happen, specifically World War II, because of humanity. Humanity is out to kill themselves. They are not right, and if wizards don't take control of both worlds and showcase their superiority, then the world will go to shit as we know it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Grindelwald, he definitely, it's the means in which he approaches things. He understands that another world war is happening and there's destruction and whatnot, but so he wants to, be proactive and stop it while he can. And I think the difference with Voldemort is that he wanted to build followers just to keep him in power.
And he also wanted to basically kill off all the muggles and nomads.
Kill off muggles, in that sense. But Voldemort's, I just, reading the source material and seeing the previous films, Voldemort is way more sociopathic. Way more sociopathic. It's like, yes, he had a troubled life growing up as well, being an orphan and all that. But you can tell when he was doing things and there was darkness, dark activities, especially when it came to the Horcruxes and splitting his soul. Everything he did it emotionally, stoic, completely sociopathic. He didn't have any emotions and didn't feel any ramifications in that sense for any bad action he was doing. Grindelwald can. And that's why I think Grindelwald has more humanity in him than Voldemort does. There's what I feel is the difference between those two.
Yeah, what's interesting, though, is that Grindelwald, there's moments where I'm like, oh, he has compassion, but he gets rid of his chupacabra, whom I thought he loved, and then he kills off the kid who's, let's say, 3 years old. Now, he doesn't do it personally. For some, he has, I don't know, there's moments where he has trouble facing some of the horrors.
But he also doesn't bat an eye. Voldemort, he tried killing Harry Potter, but with no hesitation.
Yeah.
And Grindelwald let someone else do it. Grindelwald can't. And that's why I say Voldemort is way more sociopathic. He's more merciless than Grindelwald is.
Yeah, and Grindelwald's slogan is "for the greater good." So whether or not I do think it is an interesting element to bring into it, kind of where you have this dual morality, and yet I'm somewhat conflicted because I thought it was a very smart play to have Newt very early on say, I don't choose sides. And by the end, he chooses a side. Because I think they were going with, I thought they were going with a third option. The same way he tells Tina that you represent like a third type of auror, different way of thinking. And she says, who else talks like that? And he's like, I think just me. And the fact that in essence Newt succumbs to everyone else's way of thinking, of that there's only two sides and you have to pick one of them. I felt sort of let down.
I can understand that. I always saw that Newt was, for the most part, he tried his hardest to be Switzerland, essentially, to be neutral on both sides, not really pick. Because he is his own being. He beats to his own drum. Kind of an outsider in that sense, not to say like an outcast, but he likes being himself because that's his personality. And he doesn't fit with a lot of people. We see that. So I think he's always trying to be neutral. But when he sees what Grindelwald can do, and he sees how it affected some of the people that he has grown to connect with and create bonds with, he realizes what's wrong. Therefore, he was led to choose a side.
Yeah, for sure. And that's... I feel like part of the movie, what just made it a little bit convoluted, is that we just kept going from one thing to the one thing to the one thing. So once we got to the ending, where we in essence find out we have a confession from Leta Lestrange, and then we go into essentially this giant meeting of the minds, led by Grindelwald. When he makes that fire, my problem with it is, I understand it's magic and anything can happen, but I need to understand kind of the circumstances of, okay, what spell is he casting? Like, what is the magic of this? And you kind of get it a little bit as time goes by, that anyone who's a true follower of his can enter the flames. But if you're not, even if you lie on the outside of like, yeah, I'm totally with you, but if your heart's not in it, then you burn up.
Then you die.
But then things kept changing and so forth. Like, there's just too many added elements to it that I wasn't understanding. It was convoluted.
I think it was interesting to show us visually who's really on his side and who's not, and who truly believes in his ways and methods. Sad, but eventually we had to make the split between like sides. Visually cool, but also interesting why they chose blue. And I don't know why, but like I'm just thinking, when you see Voldemort cast anything, it's always green. Green's like the representation of evil. Evil's like, it's always green. And so it makes it different that Grindelwald, because they chose such a different color, like, is he truly evil? I just have to question his moral sense, because I feel it would have been like more of an ominous color other than a pretty color, you know? Visually it was cool, but, and the purpose of it was neat. Also, destruction of how terrible it could be. As a viewer, I wondered why they chose with blue.
Yeah, not that I'm upset by it, but speaking of Newt and kind of this third possible side, it would have been interesting if he entered the flames. I don't know what would have happened, but if he was able to, like, cross over and, like, what that would mean. Just say it. I thought it would have been cool.
Well, I don't think Newt would be on Grindelwald's side, so he probably would have burned up, and then we wouldn't have a third movie with Newt.
Yeah, but again, because I think Newt to me is supposed to represent a third side, a third option, and because of that, it's almost like a Venn diagram. He's able to cross into both.
Both.
I don't know. Anyway, it didn't happen,
Maybe
so
he'd
we don't
just
need to
come
discuss
away with
it.
like second-degree burns, but he'd still be alive.
I don't want to take it off too track, but I was just reminded in that moment, Leta Lestrange tells them, "I love you." Who is she telling that to?
Oh,
The question of the night.
I definitely think it was Newt.
Ooh, scandalous.
Yeah, I was like, there was no chemistry between her and Theseus.
But Theseus was ahead of Newt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Visually, so he was much bigger in the frame.
Yeah, but if you remember the cinematography, they cut to Newt first and then they pull out, and they also showed that Theseus was right next to him. And I'm like, nah, she was talking to Newt.
The question of the decade. And we'll never get an answer because she's dead.
Well, I also think it's definitely Newt because we saw her whole flashback story when she was at the school and she saw the desk and her memories of young Newt and all that. So I was like, she definitely still has feelings for him.
Yeah, which is again seems like a very contrived storyline for me, simply because I understand women can move on and sometimes like if the guy. It can go both ways, right? It can be a guy or a girl depending on the story, but in this case it's a girl. So if the guy's not reciprocating love, she'll move on. Now, she might not love the guy she's with fully, but the fact that it's his brother is just an added layer. And at no point, I don't necessarily need a flashback, but there was no, apart from one kiss, nothing indicated that they were in fact in love.
No.
So,
but I think they're just going off of there's history, there's old feelings, an old flame was rekindled.
No, I'm talking about Theseus.
Oh, Theseus.
Like what is the indication that Theseus is
in love?
Yeah, like I can understand him being in love with her, but her being in love with...
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
He's reaching.
Maybe that was the case, that he just was so persistent that eventually she was like, "Fine, I'll marry you."
Yeah, I think it was more so a relationship of convenience. As terrible as that sounds, but there was no chemistry between Theseus and Leda, and that's why throughout the whole movie, I'm like, why are you two together? This is so pointless. It's frustrating because we know it should have been Newt and Leda.
Well, maybe that's why she keeps trying to invite him to dinner.
I know.
She's like, "Come on over. We'll be with your brother."
She wants it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, she definitely said that to Newt. Just saying.
So I'll agree with you in that respect. But let's also, since we're on the subject of Leda, let's talk about her. She has a dark history, right? She's a little strange, which we know their history if you forward in time to the Harry Potter.
To Bellatrix. Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy.
Sirius's black cousin.
Yes.
Yes. So anyway, but she's kind of like with everyone else, grappling between good and bad and where she should lie. Like I think that's very much a big part of this movie, is choose a side. And what's strange is that obviously she has moments of goodness, but then you hear the backstory, and to be honest, it's rather strange to hear her say, like, I just want a moment's peace, because the kid essentially wouldn't stop crying.
Right. And, like, you can't blame her. She's a teenager. She's young. She's stupid. But she's also a teenager. So, and I get it was an inadvertent mistake. And we saw that. Like, she just put the child down. It got switched during all the commotion. No one's thinking straight. So, like, I don't fully blame her. It's not like she put the baby in and be like, I'm going to take this one instead. No. It was just a moment of unfortunate events that all happened, which she's trying to make up for it and try to redeem herself all these years. I'm glad she feels bad about it, because if she didn't, then then she's also has issues. But so long as she brought it up, and I like how they brought this backstory, so now we have a better understanding where she comes from.
Well, two things. Number one, just not really to do with much, but I just feel like there's got to be a magical spell for everything, and there's got to be a magical spell to shut a kid up. Just saying. Number two, more important of the story, a lot of people are pointing to the interaction with Leda and Dumbledore and the fact that she's talking about her brother. He's, of course, talking about his sister, but the fact that they have that relationship in the way the brother part of Leda's line looms in the air before Dumbledore responds. Some people are pointing to that Dumbledore knows he has a second brother, a.k.a. Credence.
A.k.a. Credence.
I don't know. That's just whether or not it's right, I don't know. But some people have pinpointed that as a very pivotal scene to study.
It's like we know that Albus has a brother, and that was Albacore.
Aberforth.
Yeah, Aberforth. No, Albacore. Aberforth, all these names. But it could have been like the moment when he was reflecting on his brother. It could have been Aberforth, not Aurelius.
Yeah, but what harm did he cause Aberforth at this point in time? Like, whatever relationship he might have with Aberforth, however strained at this point in time, at least he's alive. Whereas in some sense with Aurelius, he might think him dead or not. I don't know.
Dead or non-existent because he doesn't know that Aurelius is there.
Yeah. I haven't read. I want to go. I haven't read the full script yet, so I want to go back and read the script and get some of these answers,
Yeah, we
comb
have
through
to.
it.
Goodness.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about Tina. Tina, the true love interest of Newt,
Newt.
is really made a side character.
Yeah. Another one.
Yeah, like Newt's role becomes lessened,
Like
and
the
Tina's
main,
role becomes.
the main 4 people in the first film are basically side characters in the second.
Very much so. Queenie, Jacob,
Jacob. Yeah.
Newt. All these people.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we know now Newt is tracking Tina and she can travel everywhere. Newt's kind of limited, but that doesn't stop him. So just this tracking of Tina is literally taking us to places around. It's like these 4 people are taking us around the countries that we need to be.
Yeah, and what's troublesome is that there's a whole rich history of things that happened in the 6 months since we last saw them together that we basically do a whole 180. When we leave them, they very much care for each other. And supposedly he wrote these crap letters.
Yeah.
And she presumes that Lita is in love with Newt, but he's not actually in love with her, so then she makes that assumption, and now she starts calling him Mr. Scamander.
Mr. Scamander. So, and it's just like that disconnection, that disassociation with, say, a confidant, a loved one, not really loved, but, a close person. Just calling them entitled now is just so less personal.
Yeah, I would like to see again. I would like to see a little bit of the backstory of what got us to here with them. I know Newt's not the best with words, but it's kind of what she fell in love with in the first place was that he was so different.
Yeah, he was his own quirky character.
Yeah, and he what is the saying about drums? He beats the drum of his own.
He marches to the beat of his own drum.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I was like, it can't be he drums to the beat of his own drum.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so tracking Tina, like, Newt is only tracking Tina because she has come in contact with the other guys that Newt is trying to track. So it's like, eventually they had to meet up. Like, it's like mutual friends. You know this person or has crossed paths with this person, so I'm going to track you. So, because if I can find you, you can find the person that I'm actually looking for.
Well, to add to that layer, they end up getting entwined with Yusuf Kama, the man who is avenging for his father. Now, here's what I don't understand, right? So he has this curse, the unbreakable vow. He has to go forth and do this. But then upon learning that, in fact, Corvius, I think, right? Is that his name?
Yes.
The supposed brother of Lita, he is dead. And that's what breaks the curse. Now, he didn't all of a sudden just die. He was always dead.
Yeah.
So the curse should be gone and done as soon as the kid drowns.
died. Yeah.
What's the problem?
So why is this still going? And why did we even have this subplot? I don't know. This is a story that could have easily been nixed and not affect anything.
Yeah, because the problem is it's a red herring, but it's a red herring that shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? Because it's null and void.
Right. It's now we're following this guy who's trying to exact revenge or justice, whatever way you look at it. But now we have to follow him and his backstory, and we're like, how do you even fit? You don't.
Yeah. And okay, so I know we've been kind of nitpicking this movie. We're also asking questions and trying to break down the plot, which a lot of you guys are. But to a certain extent, we're being a little bit nitpicky, as you might tell. So let me kind of contextualize it, at least, and let me know if you disagree. The problem with all these subplots, when you have all of this, is that it negates the emotional attachment you do have towards your characters. So when Queenie and Jacob they essentially split apart. When Nagini and Credence make a decision to split apart, and when Theseus and Newt have to split apart from when Lita makes her choice to go against Grindelwald, and that happens. All these things are supposed to be big moments that, unfortunately, because there's so many other like twists and turns, it's like, ooh, look at this, look at this, look at this. Oh, and then this. It's too much, and it lessens your emotional connection because by sheer kind of effect of all of it, these characters are on screen less, so therefore they're lessened in your heart.
I completely agree. Because there are too many storylines and plots to follow, there is not enough time for us to emotionally engage with these relationships that are supposed to be building. And so when we see the physical, actual breaking of bonds between each other because of the flames, it's not as impactful as it could have been.
Yeah.
Had they taken 2 to 3 storylines out, we might have had more time to focus on the relationships.
For sure. I mean, Queenie and Jacob, like they were a runaway hit in the original.
Yeah, they were freaking cute. The movie, Fantastic Beasts, the first one, ends on Jacob and Queenie. Literally, they're the last frame, and it cuts to black on those two. Like, they became essentially the main characters of that film. And then to break them up in the second one, yeah, I did kind of feel a little bit. But I should have felt more because their relationship throughout this whole movie was kind of a lie / tumultuous from the beginning because she had him under his spell. So I'm like, I don't know what to believe. Was it true love? Was it enchantment?
I think there's a true love, but he, he's protecting her, and that's why he doesn't go all the way.
Right, and they hardly spend time on screen together. They're together maybe 2 scenes throughout this entire film.
And just having Jacob run around and say, like, oh, I gotta find Queenie, I love Queenie, really doesn't necessarily do it for me.
I'm like, yeah, but do you?
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I don't know how to interpret this relationship. Nagini and Credence.
Nagini.
So.
Yeah. The one Asian in this film has to be cursed. Of course.
Well, she ends up being Voldemort's whole crux.
Yeah, and pet, which, I mean, it's cool that you actually give, like, Nagini kind of a backstory, but of course it has to be a tortured backstory. I'm like, darn it. But she's cool, but also you feel for her because it's against her will.
Yeah, I mean, here's kind of the way I view it. There better be good reasons these are the characters. Rather than, because you just said the word cool, right? And I think it's very much that, oh, wouldn't it be cool for all the fans if this was in there? And it's like, okay, but what purpose beyond that does it serve?
Right. I think it's like the idea of when we first see Nagini in the first earlier movies, like you just see a cold-blooded snake. And then when you give it personality and humanize it a bit, and we realize it's actually a woman who has feelings and a broken backstory, you kind of feel for her a little bit, knowing that she was actually a nice person who just had crap happen to her, and you feel bad in that sense. But when you put them together, if you were to marathon all these movies now, it kind of makes Nagini in the earlier movies like less as scary.
Yes and no. I mean, there's the notion being that once she becomes a snake, I mean, who does she essentially talk to? Well, there's not a lot of people with parcel tongue. So, when Tom Riddle comes along and he can speak this, she gains a friend, and he gains one too, and he can confide in her, so forth, and the relationship takes off from there. But I think going back to the notion of lessening characters, right? I think by shoehorning all this stuff in, anyone who, one way or the other, if you haven't seen all the movies, or if you have seen all the movies, your mind starts turning in the moment, and then therefore you're not focused on what's happening on screen as much because you're trying to make sense of it all. Well, how does it tie into Harry Potter? What does this mean? When does she become a Horcrux? And so forth. And I think, and from a story perspective, as Nagini, what is she adding that, let's say, any other woman couldn't fulfill? for credence in terms of that plot. Now, again, there might be stuff later on down the line, but you got to service it a little bit better.
Right. It feels like she's just now we're giving Nagini a character, a person behind the snake, someone to essentially connect to or relate to in that way. But also, you just wonder because, like, maybe she was just wronged so many times by men. I don't know. This sounds like a terrible generalization, but wronged just so many times. And, like, people always used her and exploited her curse, quote unquote. That unfortunately, like, at the end of the day, that's all she was left with because now she can't turn back into human form anymore. So she has to do the bidding of other people who use her curse. Because every time she's with Voldemort, she's always killing people that Voldemort wants her to. It's like she's doing his bidding.
Yeah.
So I think it just established she's been doing this for years. She's been doing things against her will for other people.
Which I didn't... A magic
really
circus. Like I don't know. I'm just kind of taken aback that there is a magic circus. I mean, do really like the fact that we have transformations anyway? Are people really that impressed that a woman can turn into a snake?
Well, maledictus, that word. This was a curse.
Okay, but what's the difference between McGonagall turning into a cat and her turning into a snake?
Well,
It's still the same thing. Like I understand magically there is a fundamental difference,
Right.
but as far as the ooh and the
just
ah
like the
of it,
transformation, I get that. It's like, oh, you're turning into something else. Cool, or transfiguring into something else. Yeah, I don't think like the appeal to that is all like that grandeur, but the fact it's a curse makes it a little bit more.
I just don't get it. That's
Terrible.
all.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd make a
But
crap wizard.
again, it's just the whole theory of a circus, like they're exploiting people against their will.
Yeah. Even how we got to that, like I think Nagini and Credence, there's a lot more scenes that were probably filmed that didn't end up on screen because I think literally because of time-wise, but the fact that he goes up to her and they seem to have this long, rich history. It's like, well, when did he all of a sudden join the circus, and like how did he develop this relationship? And what would have been interesting, I think, I can't say with 100% certainty, but so far the script that I've been reading includes no bonus features, meaning there's no deleted scenes and so forth. I think they literally, if it didn't make it into the movie, they took it out of the script that they're selling.
Yeah, it's redacted script.
Which, by the way, just for full clarity, this is a script that you can buy. It's a book. They very much want you to buy it. So I bought it, but the thing of it is, it's very much what you see in the movie is what you get in the script. So you get nothing different.
Yeah, no the extra added scenes that would have added more or answered more of our questions.
Yeah.
I'd like to read it too. I'm curious.
You should. I have the first one too. So, all right. Now that me and Marisa have talked about books, let's see. So much to talk about.
Speaking of another character that shows up that I wasn't expecting, Nicolas Flamel.
I think one of the most unnecessary characters.
So anticlimactic, in my personal opinion, because when the whole first Harry Potter, it's all about Nicolas Flamel. They spent a whole third of the movie trying to track down who the heck this guy is. We find out he's finally the philosopher / alchemist. And then when we actually visually see him in this movie, it was such a personal letdown because they built his character to be like such a mysterious, powerful, smart guy. And then when we see him in this film, he's such a caricature. You can't take him seriously. Like, how the heck are you alive 600 plus years? I don't believe you. It's just, I don't know, maybe this is completely subjective, but I feel like the way that he was portrayed in the film is not how they built him up in the books.
Fair enough. I mean, what is factual is that the audience that I went to see it with, they laughed at his little jog. Right. So that was, whether intended or not, it was a moment of brevity for my audience. I don't know about for your audience.
Well, people were laughing at the whole hand crushing every time because he's so old and fragile. Yeah, I get it. But he was laughable. Legitimately a comic comedic character when I think me personally just built him up as like he's a serious alchemist. You don't mess with him. He can outsmart and outtake all of you. And then when you see him, like, oh, I can break this guy in two.
Yeah, and here's the fact that he ended up being the key to preventing this fire dragon, whatever we're gonna call it, at the end. Like I understand, but it just felt so shoehorned in that again, what did it add more? I would have preferred one of our more main characters to be the one to stop him at this moment.
Right, and he didn't really. Flamel didn't really add much to the story. He was just there, like, yeah, he owned the safe house. That was it. It just so happened to be his.
He owned the safe house, and he saved the day at the end. But that's my point. Why does Nicolas Flamel have to be the one to save the day at the end when we've seen him? That's the second time we're seeing him. Mm-hmm. It's just a little too much.
I mean, I like Flamel, but I don't think he was necessary, honestly. I think that was also another fan service.
Way too, yeah. Just way too much
Again,
fan service.
it's just also another character that we have to follow who doesn't add to the end result of the film.
Or at least shouldn't.
Yeah.
Does, but shouldn't.
But, like, it doesn't add to the plot.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think, for better or worse, we've covered all the major storylines, which let me take a quick moment to encourage you. I know we listen, there's so much in this movie. It's jam-packed. We could talk about each of these for at least an hour, if not more, but we just simply don't have the time to. So that's kind of how we've covered it thus far. Let us know what you thought of each storyline, what storyline interests you the most. Anything, in essence, I'm saying this. Whatever you want to talk about, write in the comment section, because at the end of the day, as much as me and Marisa and Dimitri, when he's here, talk about these movies, it's always great to converse with you and get to know your thoughts and opinions on it. All right, let's talk about a couple of the other things that's a little bit more behind the scenes. First off, Johnny Depp. He has a lot of depth.
That he does.
Big controversy surrounding him going into this movie, and I just want to get your opinion on it. I don't know how little or not you follow this stuff.
There's controversy because of his history with domestic violence.
Yeah, with his ex-wife.
Yeah, with ex-wife Amber Heard. I know a little bit, but I don't really follow it that much. But to be fair, he was also in the first one. They did. The whole opening scene of the first Fantastic Beasts is like, where's Grindelwald, yada, da, da, da. So they built up his character already. So we knew he was going to be in the second one, despite what the hell is happening in Johnny Depp's personal life, what have you. Because it doesn't add as terrible as, like, domestic violence is. I don't know much about it. But you should, that's his personal life. Like, detach yourself from that and just focus on his acting, his performance. I think he did a great job.
Yeah, I think he did too. And he's a huge fan of the books, meaning the Harry Potter. So he has a love. It's not that he's just doing this for a paycheck, which you can argue it's Harry Potter. So sign me up if you can.
Yeah. We've covered other movies with Johnny Depp where he's clearly has done it for a paycheck. This one was more out of passion, more out of respect and passion for J.K. Rowling and the characters that she has built.
Yeah, and I think he does actually pair very nice with Jude Law. I think seeing them and knowing that that's where we're headed in terms of all of this, and they're the two strongest wizards, if you will. I like them together.
I like them together, and it was unfortunate we didn't have more time of these two main actors together on screen, because we know they're both talented in their own right, but to see it on screen would be great. And I think that they're saving that for the third.
I think they're saving it for the fifth.
Yeah, fifth.
Listen, the war is coming.
Or the eighth movie, if they're spreading it out to 8.
Well, right now, I guess I'll cut out some stuff and get right to the end. Well, and then we'll backtrack. So, as of right now, they're slated the story will take place over 5 films. So we're at, obviously, film 2. Where we're building up to is the legendary duel between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. So by that notion, the blood pact is going to be... broken, yeah, which was what Dumbledore and Newt were kind of thinking, like, can this be broken? Yes, it can.
This little vial.
Yes.
How do we destroy it?
So that's where we're headed. So right now, we're only in 1927. We got to get to 1945 is when the big battle happens.
We still got like 20 more years.
And only 3 movies.
Yeah.
How are we going to do that? We'll find out. Maybe we'll skip a couple of years in the next one. Who knows?
Yeah, fast forward, I'd imagine.
But let's backtrack it. Let's talk about David Yates, right? This guy, kudos to him. He has been in this universe
Since 2000 and at least 2004, because his first movie was Goblet of Fire, which was the 4th film, and he's been doing it ever since. So good for him to like stick with the same type of storyline in the same universe for more than 10 years now.
Yeah, and especially, like, it's one thing to be like J.K. Rowling because it's her baby, and she feels invested. Whereas him, not to say he's a hired gun necessarily, I'm sure he has now vested into it, but when you're at the level that you have to do this at, you kind of worry about burnout, right? And that's why people kind of, they do other things and so forth. But the fact that he's not and continues to enjoy and love this world, I think, is a testament to him, and kudos for his stamina.
Yeah, absolutely. And now he's the longest running director within the series, because the first 2 was Columbus, and then we had Curran, and then Yates since. So he's stuck around longer than all the other directors, but it just shows like how passionate he is about these characters and the storylines that he sticks with them for so long. Absolutely. And he knows the universe arguably better than anyone else other than J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting, like you would think that maybe they would have gotten a new director simply because we're no longer in Hogwarts. This is very much like that's a coming of age story in large part. This is they're now adults. There's no coming of age. There's now we're building to war. This is a lot darker than those. So it's interesting tonally that he is able to make that shift, because he might you would maybe think that he would go back to the well in some sense, but he's not.
Right. And that's why I feel like the Fantastic Beasts is more catered towards the adults now, because when Harry Potter came out, it catered to kids. I was a kid when Harry Potter came out. I was the same age as Harry Potter in the film growing up until the 5th book, and then, they took a while. So it catered to the kids because you're growing up with Hermione and Ron and Harry. And they're all adults in the Fantastic Beasts. But the people who are watching the movies now are the kids who were watching them when they were kids. And I get it. Now we are grown adults and we can follow adults now, not saying attacking other adults, but it's an adult story against other adults.
Absolutely. The other interesting, so rather than shoot in Paris, they essentially recreated Paris, which makes sense. Trust me, like Paris is a very old city. They won't let you make any changes, and probably the types of filming that they wanted to do, it wasn't be conducive towards that.
Yeah, no.
So good for them.
Good for them, and to build an entire basically all these sound stages, they have the money for it, and they did great because a lot of it is blue screen, green screens, a lot of it's visual effects, so they really only need certain just facades of things, and then the rest is actually filled with VFX.
Absolutely. And I think what's great is that obviously with each new movie it just looks better and better in terms of the visual effects, so I applaud them there.
Absolutely.
All right, let's kind of cut to the chase and talk about numbers. All right. So this movie came out last Friday, so November 16th, for those of you in our timeline. Mm-hmm. If you're in the future or anything like that, now you know. It had a production budget of $200 million. I'm sure the marketing campaign alone was probably $100 million for this.
A lot.
But no worries, because it makes its money back. Overall, so far right now, a a worldwide gross of 250 million, give or take. So slowly but surely,
Right, and that's just in seemingly 5 days.
Less than that. Today's
4
Tuesday.
Days. Yeah, 4 days. We're the 20th now. So to make his money back, I mean, I honestly didn't think financially it was going to be a tank because WB does so great with the Harry Potter franchise. We already had the fan base. We knew another film was going to come out from the first one. So this has been a long time coming. And everyone was just excited to see all these characters back again. So I wasn't at all in any doubt that it was going to tank financially.
Yeah, and I think it'll also build up going into with Thanksgiving weekend. You know, I think you've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the whole weekend. So it's only going to ramp up. How much it does, I don't know. Now, interestingly enough, like it's gotten 40% on Rotten Tomatoes and a B+ cinema score, which isn't the worst cinema score, but it's also not the best.
Yeah, and 40's pretty low.
For Rotten Tomatoes score, pretty low.
For a Wizarding World universe movie, that's low.
Yeah, as Rotten Tomatoes reads, Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald has glimmers of magic familiar to Harry Potter fans, but the story's spell isn't as strong as earlier installments. So,
I kind of agree with that. Mostly because there are too many storylines to follow. We, as an adults, had a hard time following it.
yeah.
Kids and teenagers, I guarantee you, aren't going to follow it.
It feels like a misguided episode of a TV series. But with a TV series, you can wait 1 week and then you're fine. Mm-hmm. Here, we got to wait till 2020. Theoretically, right? As of right now, November 20th, 2020 is when we're going to get Fantastic Beasts 3. That could change. It could be earlier, probably unlikely. It could be later, probably more likely. Or they'll just, stick to the date, which is also highly likely as well.
Right.
Regardless, it's going to be 2 years.
Yeah, and the first one came out around Thanksgiving time as well, so it makes sense that the second one came out at the same time of the year as well. Because this is the time when families goes to see films.
Yeah. If nothing else, this movie succeeded in making me anxious to know what the hell happens. Mm-hmm. So, I guess you created a very good cliffhanger. Kudos there.
Yeah.
And have now forced me to spend. If it wasn't even because of this movie. Like, anatomy of a movie is one thing, but like this movie literally forced me to watch every online video about Harry Potter, the ending explained, and so forth, because I'm like, what does it mean?
Right. I had to rewatch Fantastic Beasts, the first movie, and I only got halfway through it. Just to kind of recap what happened and some of the characters. But honestly, the first one does a great job of setting up who's who. And this one, also now have to remember, now that you know who everyone is in the first one, now they just double the cast by 2-3 times. And you're like, crap, now who are these guys? Yeah. It's a big ensemble film.
Luckily, I think this is all the characters we're going to get. I don't think the third, fourth, or fifth will add any more. Minor ones, but not major ones. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I sure hope not, because seriously, we in the first one, we only follow maybe 5 people, consistently. And this one, we're following 10, 12.
Yeah, I mean, we have our 4 main characters. We have Graves, which is really Grindelwald, and we have Credence. Those are our people. So 6.
And we also have Nagini. We had Lita.
Well, in this one, yes.
Yeah, in this one, that's what I'm saying. This second film, they doubled the cast.
Yeah.
Which.
All right, final thoughts on Fantastic Beasts.
I had to watch this again to really understand it even more.
Yeah, here's what it comes down to. Marvel movies and these universe movies, I shouldn't work this hard to understand or enjoy this movie. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe that's just the shifting of the times, but maybe a simple previously on would do. That's my conclusion. Anyway, you can agree, disagree, whatever you want, expand. Please let us know your comments. Truly, I am oddly obsessed with this movie because of how many questions it asks. I'm sure you are. And so let's ponder it together, shall we?
Yes.
If you guys want to interact directly with us and wish us a happy Thanksgiving or whatnot, hey, at Serafini TV.
That's right.
I'm at Phil Svitek. This is the Popcorn Talk Network. Thank you guys for joining us. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we've got a lot of stuff going on. Today we'll be covering Widows as well. Then we will not be here this Friday, but after that we've got
Creed 2.
Creed 2.
Woo, I'm seeing it tonight.
We've got Instant Family. There's just so many movies down the pipeline. So next week, in fact, we will be doing 4 movies, Tuesday tapings and Friday tapings. What I mean to say is, just keep checking back in, because we've got it all. Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.